The Boy Who Feels Everything. Recap Brilliant Minds Season 2, Episode 11, 10526. The brand new Episode 11 of Brilliant Minds Season 2, The Boy Who Feels Everything, premieres on CBS tonight. Your Brilliant Minds summary is provided below. According to the NBC synopsis, Dr. Wolf and the team come together as one of their own fights for their life in tonight's Episode 11 of Brilliant Minds Season 2. Make sure you bookmark this page and return for our Brilliant Minds recap between 10 and 11 p.m. ET. Check out all of our television news, spoilers, recaps, and more right here while you wait for our recap. The Brilliant Minds recap for tonight starts now. To see the most recent information, frequently refresh the page. Dr. Oliver Wolf was an excellent physician on tonight's Brilliant Mind program. In his field, he was among the best. When he broke into his father's home, he was once again in danger of being imprisoned because everything else generally fell apart for him. While Michelle was being taken into the hospital, he was off committing a crime. She was involved in a serious car accident. On the route to the hospital, she had multiple near-death experiences. When Wolf learned that Dr. Van Marcus's Michelle was hurt, he hurried back. His concern was for the younger physician. He was aware that Michelle's situation was not looking good. The second driver was likewise a cause for concern. Nick is his name. Nick was always laughing, although he wasn't in as much trouble as Michelle. He claimed he was unable to stop himself. He underwent a toxicological screening, and a psychological assessment was also requested. The laughter couldn't indicate a total contempt for human life, let alone a mental breakdown. The best course of action is to determine the cause. Wolf also didn't want Van to see a child laughing. Dr. Pierce was presenting Nick with the findings of some of the tests they had conducted when he burst out laughing once more. Van noticed him. Nobody wished for him to witness the child's laughter. Since Nick was waiting for Michelle's news and it was just one area for neuro, it was simply inevitable. Van was pulled away before he made a mistake. He was furious. It was just not the result of a child giggling. Michelle's mother's refusal to look him in the eye was the reason. She is angry with him. Because Michelle was seeing him at a banquet that evening, he felt that she was blaming him for her driving. He was not someone the mother wanted to be around. She was very explicit about that. Van was also experiencing guilt. When Michelle's test results were released, things became worse. They declared her to be brain dead. The doctors said she could not be saved. Van was told by Wolf that there was nothing he could do. Van was the one who wouldn't accept it. Van stated that he didn't want an apology from Wolf and that he needed him to fight. He wanted Wolf to do what he does best, which is to perform a miracle. That might not be feasible here, though. Her pupils were astounded. She had already ruptured, so his brain appeared to be one huge bruise. The final brain death exam was the only task remaining. It was intended to be done by Wolf. Van refused to listen when he asked one of the others to accompany him. Van insisted on attending the test. "I had to be there," he added. He simply didn't handle it properly. They performed multiple steps of the brain death test, and every indication suggested that Michelle had passed away. In order to determine whether she could breathe on her own, the last step was to remove the breathing tube. Wolf was aware that the evidence suggested that was a bad thing. For this reason, he waited until he had tried everything else before allowing Van to persuade him out of doing that section. Michelle was being hooked up to an EEG by Van. He intended to perform a mirror test. When he heard Dr. Porter making fun of him behind his back, he punched the man. Wolf had to separate them. The grieving process was becoming aggressive. Shauna, Michelle's mother, was bracing herself for possible disaster. She brought their rabbi in to provide much-needed therapy. It only gave Van a thought. He explained that in order to prevent Michelle from being declared brain dead, they may utilize a religious exemption. The religious were granted an exception. Michelle had no religious beliefs. Additionally, she consented to donate her organs via an advance directive. Even in her last moments, she sought to assist others. Van didn't want to lose her, therefore he was ignoring that. He was aware that the exemption was a New Jersey law. His dim-witted plan was to take Michelle there so that he could borrow an ambulance and prevent her from being declared brain dead. He requested that his friend speak with the EMT, her girlfriend. Knowing that people couldn't simply borrow ambulances, she took this action. She was hopping to be rejected. All 4 of the amazing ones were counting on it. They adore Van. They wanted to help him, but this prevented them from doing so. Michelle had lost her mind. It would be exposed in the last phase. Kinney, Dang, and Nash were the only ones who weren't told no. An ambulance was provided to them. Before they could treat Nick, their supervisors were unaware that they had included Michelle. After taking too many blows to the head, Nick developed a disease. The vehicle collision wasn't the beginning of the laughter. His tendency to chuckle during stressful situations earned him the nickname, the Joker. When he wants to laugh, he also sobs. Both therapy and medicine had been used to treat Nick. Additionally, no culpability was found in the collision. Those roadways became ice due to the weather. Nick requested that they deliver a note to Michelle's family after he witnessed them loading Michelle into an ambulance. Fortunately, the doctors never left the state, so what they did wasn't illegal. When it finally dawned on Van that Michelle was lost, they turned around. He had a dream in which she woke up and it was a miracle, but he woke up from it. They returned her to the hospital. They completed the test. Van ensured that he was the one who declared Michelle to be brain dead. Then he allowed his buddies to console him. Even Dr. Porter expressed regret for his earlier careless remarks. He has experienced Liam's situation. He explained to Van that his son would become an orphan if he died of a broken heart, allowing her to emulate him. He lost both of his parents years ago. He continued to mourn. Van understood that was not what he wanted for his son. He talked to Shauna. He was an excellent father, she added, and Michelle agreed. Liam was a part of Van's trek for donor patients. He later informed Wolf that he needed to take a break to spend time with his family. He couldn't be burdened with work at this time since they needed to heal. Additionally, Dr. Nash was accepting a position at the sports clinic. He aspired to be as good a doctor as Wolf and provide patients with a sympathetic ear. The sports clinic would be the greatest place for him to do that. What no one gave him, he can offer to others. Wolf was thus compelled to return to the moment. His night was cut short after losing 2 members of his crew. Once more, Wolf broke into his father's home. He was approached by someone. Simply put, it wasn't his father. It was Sophia, who could be a family member. FINISHMNT.